white here, I think the reason Alex is thinking so hard is as white, you could be worried about queen c7. Black going after this pawn more. So you need to prepare how you're going to hold it together. You can't do h4, h5 yet. Black could take the pawn. You can't get the bishop to f4. You could try to play b3, bishop b2. You could try to play a3, b4. That would be very thematic, grabbing some space over there. Like a3, queen c7, b4, bishop e7, and then here. Now you're well protected, and this space is actually kind of nice for you. You've always got this b5 move, and you can go c4, even though black's pawn chain points this way. If black's rooks aren't ready for action as fast as yours, if you go knight d2 and c4 when you've got a rook coming to c1, that's a great break for white with just space on every side of the board. Alternatively, black could do this queen b6 move. Then you have to defend here, or something like queen e2. I could see black playing a5 to avoid this thing. But in theory, they also have knight d4, knight takes, bishop takes, going after it like this. And yeah, I'm not really sure what I do as white to save the pawn then. Yeah, I'd be scratching my head here too, just like Mr. Gustafsson is doing. You want your knight on an opposite route from black. That's interesting, Viral Sigma. I know nothing about that. Bonsoir, Elise. And welcome, old chess dude. I think it was Caro with 3c5, which then becomes like a French. Yeah, white tries to have that one extra tempo thing, but despite the extra tempo, I'm not really sure what to do here for white. It's an interesting situation. Knight b3 for sure here. You want to bring the knight like this, Moonlife, to challenge that bishop? Well, it's weird. I can't figure out the next move here. Oh, sorry. Different position. Okay. Ay, ay, ay. Literally all moves seem fine here. Okay. I haven't found any I like yet, but what would be a normal move to you, Dritman? Knight B D2 with the idea of playing C4. Right? Makes sense. So then queen is going to come here. Black attacks the pawn a few times. C4 might be good, Moonlife, yeah. Hang on, in the starting position, C4? Black can trade. Right, and that's not yet good here. Because you take with the bishop, they trade queens, now you spent 2 moves with the rook. You drop this pawn, black takes it with the tempo on your bishop. Busted. So yeah, you'd have to do something with the knight first, like Dritman played knight d2, and then I play here, attacking the pawn, and now you all have to decide. Now you all have to decide how you feel about sacking the pawn. Might be time. Yep. So if we want to push the tempo of the game here, c4 is logical. You could take g6, yes, but once you take g6, there's some less bueno things about your position now, right? I think I'm actually going to stop worrying about structure here. And just try and leave this knight high and dry. Now I'm sacking a pawn, right? You could get this one. But personally, I'd be terrified now. Yeah, you can take another pawn. Yep. Eat your fill. Oh, wait. Am I missing a chance to be even fancier? Yeah, you can have all 4. Gladly. If I could move these pawns off the board, I would. At this point. Okay, we'll go here. Take g6 if need be. Yeah, I was pretty sure you would leave me one of the G pawns. So I'm going to give this thing and crack this open. I mean, if I were white, I'd be pretty terrified here. Just a little fantasy for me. Anyway, it's a thought. It's a thought. mean, all black's pieces are good, and some of white's pieces are not after this pawn sack. It kind of makes sense to me. You could take g7 instead, yeah. Over here, queen g7. Rook here. You get my rook off of this file at least, right? And then you could go here. And then if here, at least the rook's on a bad square. Is queen f4 still good? No, there's bishop f2. Excellent. Have fun, Moon Life. Enjoy that classical chess. So I don't even see how white defends f3, actually. You give the exchange right back and come here. Right. But if you look at these two isolated doubled pawns versus the power of the bishop pair, I mean, there's nothing about this position that makes you want to be white, right? Oh, what you want is you want to try and get rook c1 and murder my king too. Okay. Okay, I hear you on that. So here, check, block. And if you can get the right angle on the king, yeah, you could turn this whole thing around. Yeah, some kind of rolling slaughter in the other direction. Huh. That's intense. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shogi is very, very initiative based. I don't know Xiangqi enough. I've played it only, 3 or 4 times. I don't know how violent a game it is relative to other chesses. But Shogi is definitely very violent. We could play something more defensive like this. And then I think the best thing for white would be this move, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do next. But my guess would be that the game is close to equal somehow. Try a sample line though to see what it's like. Let's try breaking up the bishops. I guess we could play rook c3 if we're feeling very ambitious and try to win for white. This move here is also grabbing a lot of pawns. That was also really good for white, actually. Did you have knight d4, bishop d4, queen h7 instead of this? Sounds unlikely. Let's have a look. You're trying to do this and this. feels overly aggressive. If we didn't have rook g7, maybe it would be great. Oh no, even if we didn't have rook g7, there'd be queen f4, you know? And it wouldn't quite make sense. Yeah, but this queen g5 move, I mean, that's not an easy nut for black to crack. Oh my god. I've been staring at this position for a long time, but one of the most amazing tactical moves just occurred to me. Look at this move. I think it's very unusual. It's kind of a move that's blocked out by my strategic mind, because my strategic mind knows when I have the bishop pair that I don't want to trade the bishops, and that white kind of does want to trade the bishops, plus I was trying to, you know, irradiate the king. But then I was thinking, like, is there any way I could make use of this check? You know, and I even thought of this stupid move, and basically they trade, and then the check does nothing, right? I just traded queens and did absolutely nothing. So, and then I was like, man, if only my bishop could be attacking something after the trade, right? And so it's like, oh, bishop e3 of it. Can't do that, right? And I finally thought of this move. I'm explaining my whole thought process in case it's useful to somebody somewhere, you know, of how I stumbled upon a move which is very unusual to me. All right, so the point of this move is we attack the bishop twice, and the bishop's busy defending the queen. So if the bishop takes here, we take the queen, and if the queen takes here, we give check and attack the bishop at the same time. And I did go as far as to notice that if the bishop drops back, saving the bishop and the king at the same time, black has to move f4 with a, you know, more or less winning position. Okay, so we've got a bishop e3 suggestion, and Elise, I think, is correct that after black does this, white should be toast. So rook c4 defends this piece. Funny. Now as black, we're sort of looking like, do we have anything on the light squares? Like here, 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 here. Can we make anything like that work out, right? Where we just hit all the light squares. King, maybe white shouldn't take it? Not king h3, queen f1, maybe king here. Bishop comes back, and now white's got a move to do some stuff. Maybe again, queen f5 is good enough. My feeling is that this position should be somewhere in the range, somewhere close to equality. White's up a pawn, but there's a few things I like about black's position. Knight d4 controls a lot of light squares, but here white has to play specifically a move that doesn't allow queen d3. So between the king position and the power of the bishops in a lot of the endgames, I don't know. Well, I see with the queen here, with the check, if, say, the game went here, here, here. First of all, white might be able to just give a repetition with queen checks. Nah, I guess not. The king will start walking away. Okay, so, but white could play something like knight d4 with the idea that on queen check, you block and defend. So white could go for knight d4. There's also queen here, though. And then h8, yeah. So even with the rook covered, we can't quite do that. Anyway, fascinating variation and position. I'll just say my personal instinct, because we're not going to get to the bottom of this. My personal instinct is that this position's probably equal or better for black. Like, playable for black, yeah. Okay, so let's go to the game and see if Gustafsson has done anything yet. I feel like he might still be thinking. Look at his clock. Yeah, dude's been thinking for like 25 minutes in a 45-minute game. Ay, ay, ay. He's as bewildered as I am. But at some point, you just have to make a move. I had a situation like this in my last tournament in Germany last May. Not that recent anymore, but I had a game I lost against the French. They kind of started out like this, and I didn't know what to do, and eventually I had to trade my bishop on g6 to protect my e-pawn, and then my light squares were weak. Yeah, Gray Sensei, this is unfortunately, you practically speaking, you can't do this. There's no way this move matters that much. Even if you feel stuck and you can't find anything to do, you just have to do something. You know, that's just the way of it. I burned insane amounts of time in that game myself, you know, similarly to Alex, just not knowing what to do. Yeah, this is 45 plus 30 here. They're playing Elise. So he's just spent like all his time on this. Or, you know, more than half of his time on this move here. You know, I was better for several days. I don't know why I'm coughing tonight. But I feel generally fine. I don't know, just coughing a little bit. I think I'm okay. I feel like best I've felt in many Friday nights. I'm always a little bit wrecked during this show, folks. It's consistently been a lower quality show than I envisioned, Friday Night Fights. Because I have consistently, as one of the ingredients, I have been consistently lower quality than I hoped to be. Yeah. I mean, some things that I like sometimes forget when I'm feeling all depressed in these situations. Sometimes I forget that, you know, in a situation like this, now we've got queen e2 without knight d4, but sometimes I also forget that black's not necessarily threatening to take on e5 that great in a position like this. Like, let's say you go bishop d2 as white. Does black really want to take on e5, right? It would go takes, 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 bishop, right? And then maybe this move to hold it together. But even here, you know, like, You have this check, and they can't castle. You've got knight d4, threatening knight b5. They have to spin a move on maybe a6. Check. If they go here, you know you can take. And they've got a problem. Oh, can they do this now? And then here they've got this. Okay, hang on. So if they go here, maybe you take, threatening here. Takes, and then check. Now the king has to take. And now c4, right? And you've got a game, right? You've got a game. I mean, for all you know, you might accidentally win when black thinks for 20 minutes about whether or not to take the pawn and then takes it, and you just do what you have to do, right? You get some counterplay, you play c4, and then you could be the one with 40 minutes on the clock and your opponent with 14. Imagine, right? Like if you just said, well, whatever, if they're going to take the pawn, they're going to take the pawn. I'll do what I have to do. Alternatively, here after the check, they could move the king somewhere, right? And I don't know, maybe like rook c1 and just play this and keep playing the game, right? Yeah, another pawn on h2, Elise, if you haven't had your fill yet today. So yeah, we've got other games too. Okay. But I wanted to figure out what to do here, and I enjoyed taking a long think along with Alex. I think it helped us all to get inside the head of what happens when somebody gets into one of these long thinks and starts losing all their time. Ooh. I hope you have something you can eat. All right, so you want to see another game maybe? Sure. We had this one here. Queen b6, knight c3, knight e7, b3. And here we've got somebody else who's been thinking for 25 minutes on their move, more or less. Hokey Gamer here. Have these guys ever played before? Not showing us them having played before. b3 sends black into the tank. That's strange because black has not an unpleasant choice here, right? h5 and rook c8, both very pleasant options right here from a black perspective. So strange that black's been thinking forever on this game. Have I been disconnected from chess.com? Is that why I'm not seeing any moves? Let's see if this game has any moves. Maybe I need to refresh. Let's see, knight f5, take. Queen a4, grabs the pawn. Very risky pawn grab from white. And look at this middle game. Says we're not fighting against this jumble of dark square stuff. We've got the unopposed light squared bishop. We're going for these two squares. Knight h4. Nice move. Nice move. And here it shows Dan Shields is thinking. Obviously not going to want to allow knight f3 check, breaking up the pawn structure. So it's probably going to be knight takes h4 in the end. But having a thought about it. Let me go back to my other game for a second and see if a refresh does anything. Oh my god. It does. That's annoying. I mean, it's good for Alex that he's moved, but it's annoying that chess.com just wasn't showing me the games. Okay, so he played simple knight d2. Queen c7, knight b3. Knight e5, knight c... Maybe they played too fast instead of too slow. What about takes? Takes, and then takes. Wouldn't black lose a piece for their greed? At least we'll confirm or deny in a moment. If black tries to get out with the in-between move, whoop, we do it too. Let's see what else black can do after 95. 95. I mean, bishop f2, king f2 doesn't look killing. Yeah, I think white would win a piece. If white played knight c5, black trades off on f3. And now black's up a pawn instead of down a piece. White provokes the pawn forward, looking for some attacking space. Backs up, black castles. Now white needs to generate something. White needs to bring the goods because black's got these two center pawns. So I would feel inclined to play a move like rook e4 with the idea of rook a e1 or h4, right? To bring the second rook or to rush this pawn up. On d4, could we have thrown in b4? Absolutely could have, yeah. Looks playable. If that's what you wanted, you could also have played it immediately here, I think. Idea being here hits your rook, so you can't play queen d5, but we have this move, and forget about the b file. Black is going to immediately regret taking on b4 and missing this idea. If somebody takes on b4 here as black, they blundered bishop a3. They didn't see that coming. Just a little trick. And once white plays it, hopefully black says, oh gosh, you know, queen a3, bishop b5, I get it. But it's not going to be easy to repair. Not going to be easy to repair. So on b4, you know, probably you're playing something like queen e7. If you go to the wrong square, white can just take back this pawn, right? Then you've got sort of nothing to play for. You would like to go to c3 and keep this bishop from going to b2 or d2, but again, you can't. If you go back, yeah, I mean, this bishop's happy here, I think, right? We could convert. I'm just going to show this just to show that white could convert to opposite colored bishops, and the game is super playable from white's perspective. And you can also just sort of keep the tension and keep playing the game here like this. So, yeah, b4 looked like a pretty interesting move. Probably nothing wrong with bishop e3 either. d4, bishop d2 played. Black castles. And here, Alex to move. Chess.com might not show me what he moves unless I refresh it, but we'll see. We've got our other board here, which will now be refreshed. Nope, opponent versus David Pruess. 27 seconds to 27 seconds. Interesting bug, chess.com. Interesting bug. Goes to that again. Let's refresh it. Now it shows me as white. I claim it's playable, random 1200 guy, in that I recovered my pawn on d5 because of that e-file pin, and the b2 bishop still looks like a pretty good piece in that position. I mean, it might be equal. It might not be any real advantage for white, but it's certainly an option that kind of justifies the fact that we're down a pawn. Just seeing that we have that thing that regains our pawn helps me feel less... It helps me set a baseline of, like, how worried should I be about my pawn sack, right? If I see I have options like that, it tells me, okay, like, I'm probably not doing terribly. Maybe I don't take the pawn back. Maybe I play the tension move with c4. This is just terrible. Maybe I play the tension move with c4, but, you know, it helps me know, like, how good or bad an option should I be looking for. For me, I've always played chess using sort of what I call signposts about the evaluation. I need, like, reference points. that tell me, you know, am I scrambling for equality? Should I be looking for a forced win, or should I just be pressing the initiative and it's probably, you know, +1? Okay, my thing showing Dan Shields thinking here. I can't seem to click on the where's the bread small beat game. No matter how I click on it. This is a newer game that I hadn't seen earlier, but I would love to be able to follow the games I had been watching. Here, Darmuset is playing a classic plan for black in the Queen's Gambit. Considered good for black, these doubled pawns, if you can advance all the way to b4. Considered good for black since Capablanca 100 years ago. I'm actually in the camp that calculates before evaluating, but anytime I'm a very calculation-based player with very poor evaluation skills, but anytime in my calculations I see a position that I can evaluate, I take that as a signpost and it guides my other calculations more. You see what I mean? Like that position with the opposite colored bishops, that was reached at the end of a 5-move calculation. I didn't know where the calculation was going. I was just trying out lots of moves, and I didn't know whether I was looking for a good or bad position. But when I saw the bishop g6, queen d5 option, even though my instinct is not to play it, when I saw the option, I said, oh, that's a position I can evaluate. So I quickly do that and do the evaluation, and it helps me to know what I'm looking for in my other variations, right? So here black ultimately has this plan of bishop a3, bishop b2, or of rook a7, rook ha8. Either plan can basically beat white, so white is encouraged to do something like g4 and get some action going. Same with knight e5, you know, maybe trading here, maybe, well, yeah, rook b1 would be amazing if we could. So after bishop c2, yeah, if white can chase this bishop over to a4 and get the b1 square for a rook, white is going to be pumped. And white does get the b file, you see? So white's happy to do that. But this move order, it seems like you're allowing black bishop a3, which black didn't go for, but I'm not sure about white's move order right here. We get the trade, knight improves, but yeah, white's fighting nonstop here. Here black could consider bishop c2, trying to kick these rooks out, right? I imagine the correct answer for white would be we've got to fight. We can't like go passive and give up the file. We have to fight. And you know, if black's taking this pawn from us, maybe we'll get this one. And yeah, just it's got to be scrapping here for white. Because once this rook's in the game and black's fully coordinated, you're going to be much worse as white. So white's taking the right approach, continually playing challenging, fighting moves. Oh yeah. And white's now up a pawn with the bishop pair somehow, right? The worm turned. Is there a reason for white's choice on e5 here? Probably just the tempo, Viral Stigma. Just the tempo to be able to play e4, right? If you take with the bishop, you know, it's just a little bit slower tempo-wise, and so black goes bishop a3 on you. You have to retreat your boy. Black gets castled. And yeah, that was probably the reason. Just for a tempo. You know, my kingdom for a tempo every now and then. That's just the thing. And I suppose black should have taken like this to keep the pawn defended, right? Rook b6, you run into knight d7 though, right, Viral Stigma? So it doesn't particularly do anything special for you to throw this move in. You still get kicked back. Now black can go f6 or trade off your bishop, which you didn't seem to want before. And they can also just castle and keep developing. So a bit of a tempo game, I think, is what's going on here. It's maybe that's not what we're used to because it's kind of a locked position. It feels strategic, right? But there are major things that the players want to do, and so actually time seems to be fairly valuable still in this particular position. So I guess white wrecked his structure because he knew he needed time to fight against black's structure. Rather both have wrecked structures. Oh! Socked him one. Looking to double against the knight with this move here. Looks for the rook trade and is told, I'll trade for your rook, but it's going to be a bishop. Oh. That was a heavy blow right there. It's going to be hard to convert, I'm going to say. Honestly, let me just say. It's hard to convert with the opposite colored bishops here. This g4 move leaves white with really weak dark squares on the whole king side. Light squared bishop, dark squared bishop, knight that can use this square. It's not going to be so easy. All right, so white saves the pawn from being captured, but now how does this bishop get back into action, right? Knight heads over to f4, I would assume. Nope, I'm wrong, but you could also say that Darmu said was wrong because knight f4 is probably a pretty good move. Yeah, I know that white has two more pawns at least, and I'm still saying, in my estimation, this is hard to convert for white. Especially at the speed that they're playing. Look, Boondock Striker has more time than when he started this game. I would be fairly confident I could turn this endgame around as black against someone playing at that speed. I'm very ambitious to maybe play for a win, but I definitely could draw. And I would be hoping to win still. With knight f4. Okay, game went knight c3, a4. So looking to get this up here and break open some space for these two pieces. Black should probably play b6 so the rook can come be used over here. The one problem for black is this rook. And, you only have so many pieces, so if a whole rook is a problem, that's a problem. I think black played knight c3 wanting to go after the a-pawn with the rook. But to me, this is the right direction. This is the target. He's weak. I want to play rook a3. I don't want to take the pawn. I want to play rook a3 and come this way. And to stop rook a3, they're going to have to play a4 anyway. And I'm going to play b6 and rook g7. Yeah. Good luck. Good luck to anybody trying to convert that as white. So yeah, the c4 move seems kind of not good, giving up or, making it much harder to use this bishop. One could say that maybe an easier technique for white in this position would be to play this move. It's not an obvious move. It's a little highfalutin, even Jesse might say. But we're stopping this b6 thing. And if the rook activates through a8 or a3, we can take the b pawn. And that moves us really close towards eventually winning the game. And I'm just going to tuck the bishop here, and I'm willing to give up a pawn or two. Or maybe even put the bishop on c4. And then if the knight comes here, go rook e1. Okay, that could be an idea too from the very beginning. Here, here, here. That could also be good technique. We just coordinate all our pieces and try and sock it to the king while the rook's on a7. So c4. In the game, knight c3, a4. I was saying b6. And Elise is saying that then she would have this rook d7 move. I don't know if this is the right position, Elise. No, you're probably saying against knight f4 because you would spot this problem. So you're probably saying it in the knight f4 line, a4, b6, rook d7. Yeah. So reasonable, but I'm just going to dodge away from you trying to still bring my rook to the attack. And I think this will still be tricky because it's not easy to use this piece. I guess we could come here and get back into the game. I believe in you, Elise. Surely I had the position with knight f4 on the board when you mentioned that. And then I switched it around. It wasn't evil of me. It was just not careful. You know, I was bouncing between a lot of variations. But so White's brought the bishop back into the game, which is a good step. Very good step. But I think you can still feel that there's some technical difficulty because of the opposite colored bishops. And some weak squares on the king side, right? It's just still sort of weird and tricky to play. Yeah. Still giving White a hard time. It is Glassy Boy, yeah. But the point of it is not for anyone to play 24 hours. It's just for classical games to be available for people. So depending on their time zone, anybody could try and get in a game at some point, you know, on their Friday or Saturday. Okay, so in the game, knight c3, a4, e5. Weird move to me. Nice! Nice, Boondock Striker. Playing quickly, but that's a darn good move. That's a darn good move. High class. High class move. So annoying that I can't click between different games. So annoying. When I have fresh live chess, I get this just ... Nothing. Can I click on people here and see their games? That would be nice. Oh, got some kind of a workaround. It's showing me this game. So knight b3, castles. Ah, bishop takes, because if bishop takes, you grab this pawn. Okay. So changes the structure, and then queen h5 is very good after that trade, because you keep black from expanding that pawn, and you target f7. They want to castle queenside. Now it's not so easy, but knight e5 might do it. Yeah, knight e5. Now black's thinking, can they get away with castling f4, knight g6, like f5 or something, you know? Just double checking it. Black can probably get away with that. It's probably the way to play. Castle queenside while you can. Oh yeah, you don't have to calculate f4 very much. Not too much. How are you doing, Cartier? Nice. I'm pretty good. I'm coughing for some reason tonight. I don't know why, but I feel good. So, not worried about it. Yeah, if I were small beak, I would castle over to the queen side. Where's the bread with half as much time as small beak? Now all my games are appearing over here on this list. Nice. So, oh yeah, I want to see this game for a second. Dan Shields and middle game. So what happened with knight h4? Knight e5. Whoa. That's why Dan was thinking. That was the big alternative to making the trade. And I guess if you make the trade, it's not really obvious how you handle the F file, is it? Yeah, rook e2 should hold for a while. This rook is hanging, so black can't double. If black could double, they would just be killing white. But right now they can't. So, you know, black would have to do something like this. It's a little bit slow to come around. Hey, thank you, Glassy Boy. Appreciate it. So knight e5, though, I mean, Dan played a real fighting move despite being under pressure. Wins a pawn because of this tactic. So knight e5. Middle game just goes after f2. Blocks the file. Does a little trade. Gets one of the two pawns back. So now black's down one pawn, and Dan Shields like blocks one of the bishops out. Goes after f2. Probably got to defend that. This feels like a Marshall attack now, right? Very much this endgame here. Similar feeling, right? White's development's a little bit slow. Light square's a little bit weak. Down a pawn in the endgame, but you got the bishop pair, so it's always hard for white to try to make anything of the extra pawn. If there weren't a pawn on d4, black would probably be killing white somehow. But with the pawn on d4, oh, white has to be careful though, because black's got this idea of bishop h3, rook f6, rook g6. And that could be pretty venomous. I guess the rook on e2 will defend the g2 square if you ever sack on e3, fe3, and you still got it covered. Wow, intense. All right, it's letting me click on any of the games I want now, which is kind of cool. So let's see this game here. Alex J. Gustafsson. We're around here. Played that b4 move we talked about, grabbing some space. Aggressive queen h5. I would have probably still played rook e4 going after the pawn. I guess black doesn't mind playing e5 then, huh? Okay, so the queen gets over there, and that's where we are in the game. So white is still missing a lever to go after this king, you know? Really missing, still missing a piece in this attack. Thank you, Classy Boy. That's very, very kind of you. Very kind of you, especially when you can't afford stuff to try and support people anyway. It's appreciated very much. Okay, maybe you could do something like rook e4 to h4. With the idea that the knight takes, you take on h7 and get some continuing attacking options. I mean, it's a real exchange sack. It's a real exchange sack. Like I could do it like this: rook e4, bishop d7, rook h4, just to show you the idea. So the threat is going to create some kind of a breach, right? Black can't just keep things solid. Against h6, you could maybe sack the bishop, or maybe just trade on g6, right? Against knight f8, you can take. It's not enough defenders. So they probably take, check, here. And now you choose if you want to check before you take, or maybe try and cut black off. Bishop g5. Knight g6. Looks okay. Check, here, check. If f6, then here looks good. So king here. Queen h4, hitting the rook. Oh, but f6. And now you can actually block with e5. Man, I had this dream, right? If the rook moves, we go check. Here, check. Here, check. And we break through on the dark squares. But f6 in this position probably saves black. I mean, white's not lost either, right? It could be an exchange sack position. Check here and, you know, keep playing. Bishop takes d8 should be a free piece. Okay, let me see. Like here, king d6 instead of queen h4. First trade, take. And now material's basically equal with the king in the middle, so white's better. Yeah, good catch, Viral Stigma. That's like clearly pleasant for white. And then, of course, there's the queen h4, f6, sort of more speculative approach, but it feels like that's a little risky for white. There's some chance black holds the g-pawn, and we'd be worse. And then the most violent is we go here, just letting the knight live, just pardoning the knight. And the idea is, you know, to just keep attacking like this. You know, these kind of threats are not easy to parry. Bishop g5 seems to be coming no matter what you do. Guess rook g8, check. You can't come back because you hang the rook. Here, check. I feel like it's about to be mate. I think white's, yeah, there it is. That's mate. Strangely vicious from white, actually. This queen g7 move, just going after the dark squares, right? Getting rid of the possibility of black walling off this bishop. We don't even care about the knight. We just leave it. The queen g7. Maybe some kind of a saving trick. This is going to get really fancy. Knight f3 takes, blocks, check. Sorry, I said blocks, but I meant, you know, that's the point of knight f3. Black tries to win the queen. Throw in the check. King can't go back again because of this rook. And then here we've got the same checkmate, right? Oh. So knight f3 doesn't do anything, actually. I think we can just take it. That would be sick if queen g7 is better than bishop g5 takes d8, takes h4. We're sacking a full rook by playing queen g7 instead of bishop here. So like here, or here, Elise says there's bishop d8, queen d8, right? Yeah, that changes things around. Okay. So what if the best move here is queen takes g7? That would be insane, right? I haven't been in any boxing match. What boxing match, Cartier? Rook e2 the move. This rook e4 was really interesting. Okay. I'm going to clip this position and check on it later. PGN, clip this fen. Oh, Boondock Striker, you finished winning your game. Congratulations. I'm going to close this window of mine and go check out that game. So, Boondock Striker. This was the game we were watching, actually. Rook d7, I thought, looked very good for you when that move was played. Bishop d4, rook a3, king g6. h4. The rook doesn't feel happy on a3, but it looks like white made this work. Oh, and the rook gets over. So what is white? What was Boondock Striker up to here? Not totally sure. I mean, to some extent, black's kind of frozen. So, yeah, I mean, if the bishop moves, you take the knight. If the rook moves, you take the pawn. If the knight moves, you bring your rook over. Maybe partly black's just frozen and stuck, and white could improve the king and the pawn and gain space over here. Maybe eventually move the rook and have the idea of like bishop e8 or bishop d7 to f5. Oh, that would be strong. Okay. So anyway, the knight moves, the rook gets over, and now we're going to have too many white pieces near this king, I suspect. h5 made sense. Boom! Strikes. A blow. Wait a minute. The rook's defended. Black takes the pawn. White checks. And yeah, it's mate in one. Black resigns. But hang on. Hang on. Because Pruess isn't sure what's going on here. Pruess is not sure whether bishop c6 was a blow to the opponent or a blow to the self. And Boondock Striker suggests, with that whoops and that oh and that lol, that there wasn't really a plan from white in case of pawn takes c6. Okay. Funny little moment at the end of a game, which was overall very well played by a Boondock Striker. Many nice moves from white throughout this game, as we talked about when we were watching them live. But this final moment, bishop c6 as the killing move, yeah, it shows us really just how careful and attentive one can be till the end of a game and how it can matter. Like this move here would have been another interesting move, trying to get the bishop into the attack this way, right? Then we get check, and the king comes over here, and I don't know if it's totally clear, but I'm going to try and play for checkmate as well. I think that's what Boondock Striker would have wanted me to do against knight f2. I won't get confused by this kind of a thing. I will simply administer my mate. If black checks me with the bishop, I'm going to probably still just try and ignore everything. And I'm still just trying to play my mate. They can take all my pawns. Do I still have checkmate? Yeah, it's not normally how you win an endgame. So I think Boondock Striker had the right idea. Let's find a way to transfer this bishop to this king, right? So bishop c6 to e4, beautiful idea. You could also play c5 with this idea here, which may or may not work, but it's the right kind of theme to the position, right? Bishop c6, bishop d3, c5, move the rook, get the bishop up. But it seems like we actually had a mistake here in the execution, which black missed. So there we go. Let's check on one of our other games. Gustafsson. In the game, rook d8, rook e2, rook d5, chasing the queen back. Ay, ay, ay. Black says, get out of my king's house. Some defense coming in from the micro hawk. And this game is anybody's guess what's going to happen with it. It's going to accelerate since they're down to 10 minutes against 12. Here, still early in the middle game. FXL and Hokey Gamer, how's this one going? Another one I got frozen out of and then couldn't see. So FXL managed to hold that whole space advantage on the king side. We got opposite side castling. This looks very promising for white, this B pawn coming forward. Black looks fairly cramped here. Oh, but they're able to win this B pawn and get away with it. Yeah, Moonlife and Boondock Striker. You can go back on the VOD to catch more of what we said about that game. Should rook b1 not be a problem for black, asks Drunky Pluck. Yeah, I mean, it's really plucky of black to think they can grab this pawn and get away with this file. So let's try to win a piece, shall we? This is Drunky Pluck's idea. The other idea is that if black plays a different move, we'll do this next with the rook here. It looks like this was the key idea of this whole b4, b5 position. So FXL, I think, had the right idea. Ramming this pawn forward, grabbing space, kicking the knight, going, thinking like there's going to be enough juice with the black king here. But here they just didn't calculate the detail, right? Oh, they did play rook b1 in the game. Then how did white not win? Let's see. Takes, queen a6, takes. Oh, white is up a piece. Okay. c6, oops. That was a little hasty, too tactical. That move looks pretty solid though. Knight c5. There's so much creaking in black's position. I think it's fallen apart here with this knight c5. But I do think this c6 was a move, sorry. I do think the c6 was a move too soon or too fancy. In this position, wouldn't you normally put your knight on d4 first, right? Amazing square. And then look whether or not c6 wins next move. And, it very likely will. Or even f5 can be played on the other side. So this sort of just gave the pawn. And, yeah, I mean, now maybe black objectively should trade. Of course, white can eventually win with the bishop if they play well, and black knows that if you trade, it lets the bishop come here, and it's really hard to avoid a direct mating attack, even here, yeah. So I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of taste for black, but white gets this knight c5 move, and that looks killer. So all props to FXL. They played b5 correctly, they found rook b1 like Drunky Pluck, justified the whole thing tactically, won a piece, and they haven't taken their foot off the brake. That's an important thing. A lot of times in this kind of endgame, you see people, I know I said c6 might be a move too soon, might be unnecessary to sack the pawn, but a lot of times when someone's up a piece, you'll see them just really take the foot off the gas, just start playing like simple, safe moves, and you see FXL is still trying to kill black. Why? Well, because, you got two rooks on a nice open file, a target here. This king position's weak, so you're like, maybe I'll use my extra piece to, I don't know, attack their king. Kind of what pieces are for. Carnage to the French. Except every one of these French's viral stigma is basically a Caro Kann. But yeah, more or less, carnage to the French. Fair enough. Well, Gustafsson's opponent was putting up a defense for black. on that other board. Oh, but it just finished and Gustafsson won. What happened? Rook d5, queen f3, e5. Well-intentioned, right? Put the pawns on the dark squares to block out this bishop and develop your last piece. But queen d5, carnage to the French. Ay, ay, ay. As we're saying on all these Caro-Kann boards. Yeah, I mean, this position was hard to play for white or black, right? As we see from the players getting low on time and the game kind of ending with a blunder here. There's a lot to think about and really, really hard choices. So, I mean, I didn't know who was better for the last, 8 moves of this game. At any point, I was always unsure. So, and after this, I know who's better. But, I mean, every point up to this, I didn't really know what was better, the extra pawn or the open bishops. Yeah, of course, they all feel more French, right? But they all technically started as Caros, right? Advanced Caros where black played c5 or e6 and then c5, and we get Frenches, yes, absolutely. Okay, let's see what else we got. We have had several blunders today, right? Several games decided by blunders. Like this game here, we've got e5, queen d5. The Boondock Striker game we were just looking at the very end. The deciding moment was white goes bishop c6, hanging the bishop to pawn takes c6, and black doesn't try to save the knight. They try and get fancy with an in-between move, saying, hey, you move your rook, then I'll move my knight. And this was check. So that was black's blunder, was not just not seeing pawn takes here, but if they realized bishop takes knight was check, then I imagine black would play some move along the lines of knight here or something. I don't know exactly what they should play. They're probably in trouble, but they play some move. But they played this, not noticing this was check, I think. So we are definitely having some blunders back and forth here in our games today, which is, normal and can happen. Okay, looks like FXL has finished this one off nicely, just a move or two after what we saw. The bishop gets into d6, and that's this checkmating pattern, right? Boom. King nailed to the A file. Oh, that was in the same game, Viral Stigma. Yeah. One of the biggest blows Gustafsson got was that bishop g5 check tactic. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a blunder because I don't think black actually had any defense to that plan of bishop b5, rook d3, rook a1. They had no way to extricate the knight, I think, without running into bishop g5 that I know of. So, I don't know. Well, I guess it could count as a blunder. But sort of a close call because white was actively, threatening to beat black, right? So black was definitely under pressure to find the right move there. Let's go over here. Check out this end game. So we were around here last we saw it. Rook e2 to defend the pawn was probably necessary. White goes for this. Black goes for this plan, lifting the rook. And yeah, so you can't kill white with this sack that I mentioned, right? Because after fe3, white defends g2. So here, the black pieces are kind of maximalized and they can't quite break the white king. But white's kind of stuck in here and can't move almost any of these pieces, I don't think, right? Because if white ever moves the knight, then black goes check and here, and you'd think that there'd be a winning move, but there's not. That's weird. That's super weird. Okay, maybe white can play knight d5. It seemed like white was pretty frozen here. So black plays c5, trying to bust the last piece into the game. Super logical. White plays what most people would play. Sort of, if you're thinking defensively, like we bring the knight here, block the attacks on the king, bishop here. Yeah, very, very logical. But maybe knight d5 was a weird brilliancy. I don't know. cd4. And the bishop comes in. So white's going to play bishop e3 to trade it off. And black's probably going to keep it with bishop e5. Yeah. So the game goes on. Black's busted the second bishop out of jail. So black has a clear advantage with the two bishops raking the position. I guess to me, the plan to try and crack white would be h5, h4. So that's what white's got to have their eyes on as they make this next decision here. Rook g2 in that knight d5 line. Okay, here. Rook g2. What's the rook doing here? Trying to take on f2, huh? And getting out of the way of this stuff. It did Donkey Pluck, yeah. But it was like a little over 2 hours of really intense pains. What solved it was milk, and I think that something weird may have happened where I no longer taste that food is spicy. So I ate something so spicy that it hurt me without me even realizing I'd eaten something spicy. So now I'll have to trust my eyes, and if something looks like too red, maybe not eat too much of it. Yeah, I don't know, Donkey Pluck. It's super weird. I feel weird saying it, but I don't know what else to say. Like, I was in such excruciating pain, and the milk really helped. So, yeah, FXL, congrats on the game. There is some... We did see some moments in your game, not the whole thing. From what we saw, you played pretty clinically. Okay, so white goes for the pawn, black goes for h5, h4. Rook e4 to stop it. Yeah, I don't know, Donkey Pluck. Like, we've had several times recently where I taste the food and I say it's not at all spicy. You know, anybody, you know, the kids could eat it. And then my partner tastes it and says, no, they can't. You know, and she doesn't even want to eat it. So I don't know what happened. There will be 15 plus 5 arenas tomorrow, yes. But we've got so much crazy stuff going on with the kids, and my partner is doing a shift at the hospital, so I won't be able to comment it. We'll just have tournaments for people to play. Yeah. Let me send a message. Okay. Now you say it, Dranky Pluck. I don't know which one is which. But I've always been able to taste spicy food before, you know, and and I've also, even when I've eaten it, I've never had pain like this. This was just another level. I've had, you know, mild discomfort, but oh well. Okay, rook e4 covering h4. Bishop f6, still going for it. Clock's on Dan Shields to find the solution. Maybe there's bishop d4 is the first candidate that occurs to me. Something's just been played, and it's bishop d4. So the point of this is that if black trades and you recapture, they don't have control of h4. If they play h4, you trade on f6, and if they take back, then you can take h4. So a critical line is going to be h4, bishop f6, hg3. And we're probably about to see that variation. Yeah, so white's going to go bishop f6, black's going to play hg3. Oh, but then black's winning? I think black's winning. Bishop f6, hg. You save the bishop, say to d4. G takes f2 is double check. So the bishop can't recapture. And then black just queens the pawn. Viral, you think maybe king h1. And then after h4, what do we have? I guess we have the fact that it's not necessarily checkmate when black gets in here, right? We move the knight somewhere. You have an idea where this piece goes? Maybe go somewhere forward and aggressive. You'd say knight e2 maybe? Okay. Okay, I'm thinking of maybe taking, right? With this idea. Oh wait, I can't allow knight f4 in the wrong way. Well, there's some way for black to be better here, right? And we have to watch out for knight f4, but there's something that black can do for sure. It could be as simple as coming way back here, and then after king here, you take. And against knight f4, there's always bishop a6. And, well, what am I doing? I don't know for sure. Somehow black must be better. Maybe here, trying to get in there. Okay, I don't know. There's something, though. There's something good for black here, right? So we're going to look at this other suggestion from Viral Stigma of knight f4. So hang on, let me try that. Rook here. So the suggestion was knight f4 here. And I guess if I take on f4, the rook takes, and then the rook's out of danger. Maybe this? No. What a mess it still is, actually. Yeah, instead of rook f2, there's several other options, as Foos points out. There's bishop e5. Someone said there's bishop g2 h3, maybe just locking that in. There's this move here, just heading to this approach. There's even this weird move, rook a3. Might be more impactful than rook f2 somehow. Comes with tempo on this piece. I don't know if there's still knight f4 there. Maybe there's still knight f4 there. Yeah, I mean, if black's only slightly better viral stigma, then white's giving a good fight instead of going down. B takes a3, drunky pluck is just kind of walking into my idea, right? Check here, takes, king here, check here. And black's just got total control, kind of, right? You get the rook back immediately and you keep control. Or maybe come here, here, and start even pushing this pawn, or stick this over here and tie white up. It's a tough position for white still. Okay, so let's see what they're doing in the game. So king h1 seemed to be more resilient. Bishop d4 looks like it should lose to this. White took back like this, and black now has a bishop against two pawns. This is a very hopeful move from white, getting behind the passer. Black's looking at mate, of course. Well, black's up a piece, pretty much. Let's have a look over here at this other game we had. Queen h5. Knight e5 came in, yep, and getting castled. Good move. a4, a5. Wow. Giving that b5 square. Going for the b5 square. G-file. Pushy, push, push. Wow. This is a fight, too. Big time. So from white's perspective, are we gunning for a quick c5, or are we locking in the knight and going to improve the rooks? My sense is there's going to be some improving of the rooks before this becomes a big move. Yeah, lock in, rooks on c1 and d1, pressure d6, prepare c5 at some point. Free the f1 square for the bishop to defend here. Or maybe just play g3 once black doubles rooks. I mean, it's a pretty solid square to block the file on. Actually, with this pawn pinned. Hey, Gabriel. Oh, I was probably just watching that game like 2 seconds ago, huh? Middle game with the extra bishop. So a4 here, threatening mate. Rook here. Ah, nice final move, Gabriel. Yeah. I mean, I saw it coming, but that is very, very nice. Very nice final move. Super. Okay. So that leaves us on this game here for the moment. Off to work. All right. Take care, Drunky. Have a good day at work. Calling my reinforcement here. Little piece of a cookie. I feel very dry from swimming. Let me see how I did today on the swim. All right, nice. I hit the first goal in the 500-yard free. With about 14 seconds to spare. Not bad. About 45 seconds to go to my next goal. All right, so rook g7 comes in. Dublin is coming. Dublin is coming. If you took someone's queen and they didn't move, how long would you wait before you said something to them? I mean, I basically never say anything to an opponent, Boondock Striker. Chlorine has no smell. So what are you smelling then, Viral Stigma? Oh, great. It's a compound created by the mixture of chlorine and pee. No way, it's such a powerful smell. It's such a powerful smell. There's no way that people are peeing that much in every swimming pool on Earth, Viral Stigma. There's no way. It's too much. Unless it's like a reaction where you need like, you know, one molecule of pee to create 1 mole of trichlorine. Chlorine, trichlorine, trichlorine. Why does it feel like you would say chlorine but trichlorine instead of trichlorine? Also, I'm going to look up if the chemical formula for trichlorine is P plus chlorine. Here it says you can put trichlorine directly into your swimming pool. Mixed chlorine and cyanuric acid. You just looked it up. My computer's refusing to let me search for P in my Google in my search. And it just says your protection our priority. I'm not allowed to look for P for urine. mean, I think of like urine as having uric acid in it. I don't know if it has cyanuric acid. Pool smell is not due to chlorine, but to chloramines, chemical compounds that can form in pool water. Chlorine and perspiration, cosmetics, and urine. Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of perspiration in a swimming pool. I think perspiration has to be a lot more common than urine. I could believe that even cosmetics are more common than urine. Apparently there are a bunch of scientific studies about cyanuric acid in urine. But when I used the word pee, my search engine refused to search for it. All right, there, the rooks are doubled. It was telegraphed. What was queen h6 about specifically here? Hitting the rook when we knew that black wanted to double. What was that? That was weird is what it was. Queen h6 was weird, right? Full tempo to black for what they wanted to do. We have to understand why the queen would be better here than here, and I don't. Good question, Hokey Gamer. So in this game here, and by the way, everybody, you are all encouraged that when your games are done, you can come in here and ask me a question, just like Hokey Gamer. That's one of the points of this whole show. Okay, so here when white's playing b5, my suspicion is your position is not good. So I'm going to back up and say that this b4 plan, you know, things are going well for white here. So rushing queenside castling did not seem to be the right plan actually here. I understand they played f4 and g4. You thought, let's go over here. After b3, I did not expect your knight g6, Hokey. And this is a little bit early to talk about deviations, but to me, I expected either rook c8 to put play on the c file or the move h5. And this is a typical move. Do you know about this move h5? And what do you think? And what do you think of it here? The idea is to create a blockade of the king side so that your king will be safe on the king side. Okay, new to you. All right, well, this is one of the few points in the game where we were commenting long ago. We were looking at it here. And on this move and the previous move, h5 was the move that really stood out to us. The point of the move is to get control of f5 for your knight. Not just because the knight is good there, but because whether white takes or pushes, when your knight's here, this pawn's blockaded, this bishop's blockaded. White has almost no juice to ever attack the king side in this position here. When you play h5, white wants to be poised to play h3 and hold the control of these squares. If they can play h3, then h5 is not very good. But here after hg4, the rook's hanging, so they can't do it here. Which is why in a position like this, you might see somebody play bishop g2. What would be the point of bishop g2? To answer h5 with h3 and hold the flexibility of their pawn mass. The pawn mass and the space from the pawn mass is only really good if they can actually do stuff with it. If there's some ability to, you know, open lines or do something dynamic, something violent and interesting with it. They can't just like sit on the space. That's not going to checkmate your king. So after b3, h5 should be good. Knight g6, probably not the best square for the knight. And then let's see a couple moves later where you castle. What would be a good plan from here instead. At this point, your opponent's got space. The pawn center looks protected. They look well poised to play f5 if you castle. Like, this looks like you just lose. Oh, maybe you've got this trick, knight e5. Yeah, you've got bishop takes a4. You've got knight d3 check. Okay. But this is okay. Here it is scary to castle kingside. Let's say your opponent goes, I don't know, queen d2, protecting this bishop, or king f2, protecting the bishop, and they just want to play f5. Scary. But castling queenside wasn't good either here. So I think in this position, maybe you should fight with like f6 or f5, something here. Like fight against their space a little bit and see how it goes. Also, you could play this move. What would white do about this? If your rook were on c8, this knight would be dead. Right? Remember, the other way I considered playing this position is just developing the rook. Just because, you know, there's some squares of interest. But, okay, so we're here. Yeah, and what if now you go bishop b4? Which just says bishop e7 wasn't a good move, right? If bishop b4 is a good move. No need to let white develop. But what do you think of bishop b4? What was white going to do? Rook c1? Rook c8? Maybe queen a5? Feels problematic for white. Here you're threatening like knight takes e5 and so forth. You also considered f6 to have space on that side, yeah. Yeah, I've sometimes castled queenside myself and played king b8, rook c8. The same plan you did here. I've played that a bunch of times. Where did I play it? I mean, I just mean, like, what did white done that encouraged me to go for that plan? I think it was positions where I'd already played f6 and I was getting ready to like do counterplay on the king side. Or, oh no, I think I know. It was something like, bishop g2, h5, h3, hg, hg. It was something of this type here. And then I said, okay, I'm going here. You know, their king was there. And, you know, I've got like rook h8 and f6. And one rook's already been traded, and this is just a little bit less scary. So it was in this kind of a position with the open h file that I went for the queen side, I think. And I think also maybe once a game that went like, just for argument's sake, I need to play some kind of a move. I think I had a position like this, and that was also one where I went this way and used like the g5 break. So, but here it seems where you're castling queenside, you're just encouraging the opponent to do this push here, and it's not quite right. So, better plans, rook c8 with bishop b4 and knight b4, and or bishop a3 all coming. Right, that could be an idea, bishop a3. Like you go rook c8, they go rook c1, you come here, you come here, looking to do stuff, right? Mischief on the file. Or you could play f6 and see how white handles that. Yeah. Okay, back to our Sicilian. G3 was the move. Covering the file. Bear in mind this thing here. I forgot about it for a second, so white has to keep their eyes on rook takes g3 sacks. Or anything else coming at that point. Foods, it looked like it wasn't because of 95 FE, 95, 95. And you've sacked 2 pieces, yeah? I looked at that theme too, but the point of f6 is actually to threaten that idea. The point of f6 is to be able to go fe, fe, knight takes e5. Even if white castles. But you can't do it yet. Yeah, Hokie, if you're going to start playing either Caros or Frenches as black, the fight over the f5 square is really big, so you'll have to learn some of the themes around that. Like black trying to play h5, white playing f5 as a pawn sack sometimes when the square's not even defended. Can still be good for white. All right, Viral wants to bring this knight here because it's often suffering on this square. Unpin the pawn. I don't know if Viral wants to go f4 or just wants g3 to be better defended. Oh my gosh. You wanted f4 earlier. Maybe what Where's the Bread wants, folks, is this shocker. Maybe that was the point of queen h6. Like, let's say I just get off the file to get her out of c5. Yeah, I agree, Gabriel. From what I saw of your game, you had way too much time left at the end, even though you played a good game. You know, there must have been something else you could have thought about during the game. Yeah, just, you know, go after that. Knight c6 to defend it. Pop! Wait, can black survive this? I popped myself. Dang it. I hate when I do that. Too clever. Too clever by half. I'm just saving little themes for myself in my teaching materials. Okay, so here we are. G3 played. Black in a deep think. I have some suspicion white might go for this. At least that's the closest I am to understanding what white's doing. I will say it's pretty weird because in general this is considered to be the best square for the queen in this pawn structure. Unless you can replace it with the bishop, then you could pick a different square for the queen, I suppose. The bishop would also be good there. Sorry, we're on G3. I'm hungry from swimming. Hungry. Yeah, 1 a.m. going to bed is quite a good idea. See you another time, Gabriel. Thanks for playing. Hope you enjoyed your game. You can put the king on g2 to get off of the dark squares, but then black will play bishop c6, and you'll have a whole host of other issues, right? So let's say I play king b8 for black again, king g2. Oh, hello. Right? And then what do? You start playing a move like f3. Well, now all you've done is move these pawns little by little. You're making weaknesses out of which black can make hay, right? I don't know. Then they start hitting you with tactical moves. F5 takes. They don't even care. You know, you're not threatening too much. They come here, here, get in there, hitting some things. Knight here. Doesn't it just feel like white's under some pressure? Maybe black's ready to sack the bishop next. Knight hanging on b3. Did I hang that knight? Or did I correctly... I meant to move it away when it got double attacked. Earlier I hung it? Okay. In the game the knight hung? Okay, so this undefends the knight. Oh, just right here. Just right here. Holy moly, and Smallbeak just played it, Viral Stigma. Like, as you were telling me about the idea. Yeah, Stamen. Something to think about. Smallbeak thought about it for 12 minutes and went for it. That's going to collect 2 pawns and a knight for a rook. Now at the end, black's h-pawn might be hanging without the 2 rooks around there to help it. And these pieces aren't that active yet, these bishops. But I mean, white's king's going to be weak for a long time. So it's pretty reasonable. I think I would rather be black. But overall, it's going to be relatively close to equality. So it's going to be really tense and really depend on who plays, you know, well or better, or however you want to think about it, right? Whoever plays well in the ensuing melee, it's going to be good for them. Yeah, where's the bread? I mean, there's only so much you can do. Even if you didn't see this move coming, you've got 16 minutes on the clock. You can't spend more than 2 minutes deciding whether you're going to take the rook. I mean, what are you going to do? Just move the king away and resign? So he's pretty much got to take it, but you do want to spend a moment to sort of figure out what's going on, what's coming next, you know. So you want to spend, 1, 2, 3 minutes assessing the surprise, figuring out where you're going, but you can't agonize over it when you're in this kind of a time crunch. I'd put the king on h1 here. Partly an instinct thing. The king's going to be bad on either square, right? In theory, on h1, you're not in striking distance of the dark squares, which you have no dark square bishop to defend. And queen f2 isn't with check. So you can move your rook if you need to without allowing just instant destruction. Okay, white goes to h2, so now consider this rook on f1 tied down for now. And yeah, white probably needs to deal with the idea of rook b2 and the fact that e2 and f2 will be loose. So it's probably not a position for queen takes h7, rook takes b2. Probably not. Although, I mean, black has this back rank. That's the liability, right? It's going to force black to play some defensive moves. I mean, those bishops are really bad. Black's king is quite problematic with this locked in. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be wild. Can white even go rook g1 here after all? I said consider the rook trapped, right? Or I mean tied down. Right? I just say, who cares? And then when you move the queen away, rook g8. Thanks for playing. Holy moly. Holy moly. So white's move right here. Yeah, rook g1 is a thought. You know, also black can't take on f2. If you can get this rook around to g2, it's going to be a lot better there than on f1, right? Defend it, but also cover g4 and have a whole open file for counterplay. There's queen e2 in this line. That's a nice idea. Let's have a look. Viral Sigma. Woo! Bam! Oh, that's a great one, Viral Sigma. I bet that's the only, like, crushing move here for black, right? Okay, I'm going to clip that one too. It's a little bit simple. I should have seen it. I should have seen it. I'm not going to give it a super high rating. I'll put it in there. If it were a simpler position, you know, this idea of removing the bishop for knight g4 would be like a 1000 to 1200 tactic. But because the position's super chaotic, people can be easily confused and it's less noticeable. So I will give this to 1400 to 1600. Okay, let's see the game. Rook b3 has been played. Where is the bread is thinking 10 precious minutes left. 10 precious minutes left. So rook g1 doesn't work. Queen f2 destroys it with queen e2. Okay, no rook g1. What other ideas then do we have? Queen d2 recentralizing. Sure, that's a move. I don't love rook a3, but it came to mind for some reason. I mean, black wants to play rook b2, so I don't know about rook a3. Stigma chimes in that queen d2 also looks logical. And what she's not doing nothing over on h6. She's just looking for counterplay instead of defense, right? Like you can take and come here, right? And black's a little bit worried about this, maybe. But, I mean, our counterplay as white is probably not powerful enough to justify this, right? But, you know, there's something here. I mean, it's an approach. It's an approach. Actually, it's maybe more than I realized, even. So, Stamen, you're asking if I were playing this position as black and considering rook g3, would I see as far as rook g1, rook g2, queen f2 to e2? Quite likely. It depends how much time I have on my clock and how many other options I have. Like, thought process often depends on what you think the current evaluation is, how much time you have, what you think you need to be looking for. But I am at baseline a calculator versus an intuitive player, right? I don't have great evaluations. So I just do like a ton of churning through moves. Compared to humans, obviously, not to compare to computers. But for a human, I'm sort of a brute force kind of thinker. So I do often in positions like this look at a variation that far ahead. That's pretty typical for me. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves for black and 4 or 5 moves for white. Yeah, that's pretty typical for how I work on chess positions. Wow, interesting move from Where Is the Bread? Rook a2, not rook b1, not queen d2, but he's valuing this pawn and keeping this rook out of the second rank, right? Because e2 and f2 are both vulnerable. But rook a2, huh? It's a weird square for the rook. But I mean, rook b1 is a weird square for the rook too. So who's to say? Who's to say? What would have been better? Well, I mean, queen d2 really appealed to us. Maybe there was something clearly wrong with it. Actually, I could imagine white maybe worrying about queen d2, rook f3. But you'd think that king g2 would defend this and chase the rook out. They can't hang out there forever. Yeah, okay, so that's not a problem. Any problem with queen d2? Looks sort of possible. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with queen d2. It looks like one of white's best 1 or 2 possible moves there. All right, so now small beak needs to make more hay of this. White's probably still wanting to get counterplay. Where's the bread in my understanding? Or from my having seen snippets of 5 to 10 of their games over several Friday nights, I feel like Where's the Bread is often looking for counterattacks, counterplay, tactical counter blows. They don't go into a defensive mindset, so to speak, when they're defending. Not an overly defensive mindset like I sometimes have. They still keep looking for aggressive options. So that's dangerous for the opponents. And what is small beak supposed to do? I mean, as I said, super complicated. Either player could win, draw, lose, etc. So we have to wait to see how up for it they each are. I guess black would probably have some kind of feelings of wanting to bring more pieces near white's king. King would be kind of like a light to a moth or a mosquito or whatever. You'd be attracted towards this thing. Okay, Stamen says maybe knight g6 creates a threat. threat is, but hopefully I can find it. Knight g6. Creates a threat and allows the idea of e5 to improve this bishop. But what's the threat? Not sure what the threat is. Maybe continual re-improvement of the pieces. Queen here, bishop here. Certainly a candidate move, but I do not see the threat, to be honest. Ah, okay, the threat comes in the next move after something like e5, getting the h3 square. Makes sense. So knight g6, idea e5, and then you can start bothering the king from h3. Your rook gets some more angles. Knight can come to f4 to join the attack as well there. Yeah, makes sense. Since we have the unopposed dark squared bishop, it's more thematic to play moves like f5 or d5 to get that beast out. But, I mean, here I don't see how either of those moves do anything. Funny move would be rook d3. Yeah, rook d3 is possible. Yeah, totally. Notice how Smallbeak's not playing quickly because white is in time trouble. Smallbeak's just using their time, normally, like they might want to. Here's a candidate move. Bishop takes b5. And however white takes, then I just centralize the queen. Right? So up to white if they want the a file or the c file. But let me just put queen d4 on the board so you can see what I'm talking about. The feeling of that queen hitting the middle. Looks pretty powerful to me. That queen immediately. Yeah, I'm feeling her wrath instantaneously. And remember, with 2 pawns for the exchange, black doesn't need a lot to, get sort of a promising ending. Like, let me just show one idea. We go queen here, covering e4 and just sort of getting as close as we can to the center with our queen, maybe regretting we didn't play queen d2 before. And black plays f5. We can't take because of queen f4, right? And then if I do something like rook d1, tempoing the queen, saying like, you know, well, can you trade queens after you sacked material? Well, black hasn't sacked much material, right? So, okay, we could calculate some crazy bishop g5 as well. But I just wanted to show you this position here and talk about evaluating it. This position here, you know, in general, knights are not amazing against rooks in endgames, right? But remember, we had 2 pawns. We got a 3rd pawn when we traded queens. Look at this mass of pawns in the middle of the board. Black's going to have this amazingly powerful light square pawns diamond in the middle of the board, completely negating white's light squared bishop. Then black's dark squared bishop can go wherever it wants, and this knight is pretty strong in the middle of the board for now. Yeah, also, if you want to get this rook into the game, you probably have to sack a 4th pawn on b2. Again, the pawn's not even that good here. White doesn't have a great majority. Black's got a beautiful 3 extra pawns in the middle of the board, plus an extra h pawn that's not great right now, but, you know, it's there. So this position looks like super, super good for black. I just want to give that as a baseline to show you how little it could take for black to have an advantage in this position, right? I gave up my... He played knight f3 in the game. I'm giving up my bishop pair, centralizing, and then trading my queen for 1 pawn. Again, you have to be very careful trading your queen anytime you've got a knight against a rook. If you've got a bishop against a rook, there's a huge difference between the bishop and the knight in an endgame. Once you're in the endgame, I mean, the bishop's like half a pawn better than the knight, or maybe more. So there's a huge difference between the bishop and the knight. And with the bishop, you can much more confidently play into so many endgames against the rook. With the knight, you have to be very careful, but this one is just beautifully great for black. Now, that said, I know you want us to look at your game, Kevin. I would love to. I'm just really interested in this game at the moment. So let's look at it a little bit more and see if we find a better moment to look at your game. Knight f3 check. So what's the deal? I don't actually understand. The knight seemed better than the bishop. I guess just to some extent, like clearing the way to go after the king, right? Clearing the way for queen c5, queen e5 and stuff. But white doesn't take it. Well, that's a shocker for black. To deal with. But that's weird. I hated this bishop for white. I mean, even if black goes knight d4, I think this is better for black than the other one, maybe? Because this is, in some ways, like the worst piece on the board. Well, no, there's the rook on a2. I forgot it's buddy. But, But both these players agreed on this, you know. Smallbeak thought for 9 minutes, and Where's the Bread thought for 2.5 minutes before saying, yeah, no, I'm not trading that knight. That's weird. Queen h7 does defend e4. Right, okay, so in my little suggestion here, a move that surprises me myself. You know, I'm more of a bishop c6 kind of player, but didn't see how to make it work. So anyway, so in my little suggestion here, Fu says queen h7 would defend that pawn. Yeah. True that. Then I guess the next thing I would think to do as black would be here. Hitting the bishop. Doesn't really have anywhere to go, does it? Bishop h5. Check. Here. Check. This is a beatdown, right? You guys can see that the white pieces are completely discoordinated here, right? and black's coming for a strong attack now. And there's basically nothing I could do in any of these positions for white, right? I had no legal moves. Just getting checked around. Queen h5 instead of bishop f5, sure. Could be done. Then I was thinking check, king here, and then black would grab the center pawn. Again, the game will go on. You know, it's not done by any means, but black's got beautiful pawn center and the queen. It's the centralization. The whole reason I gave up my bishop on b5 was to centralize the queen, and I'm hopeful that everybody can feel her power a little bit here. And with the knight, I mean, this is a lot of centralization. Of course, again, this rook, oof, not very powerful. Okay, we've got to move from small beak. Let's see what it was. After king g2, where does the knight go? g5. All right, so feeling aggressive. He's trying to hop around the king. He's defending this. He's attacking this. He's probably dreaming of moves like f5 and coming into h3 with pieces. He's feeling dynamic, feeling aggressive. If white's rook were on b1, a lot of these lines would turn out better for white. I think so. f3. Yeah. You got to do what you got to do. Locking out the knight, but oh my god, the dark squares, you know? I mean, the queen I just want to centralize. I'm sorry to start being repetitive, but I mean, did you guys feel the queen in those last couple variations I was showing? I think it was really, really telling, really clear. Random versus Darmusa. You want to know how you're doing? I'm sorry that somebody disconnected on you. That's rare. Or their name really is random. That's rare in the dojo for somebody to do that. So you were expecting, of course, FE. The game's just getting going, too. You're going to put the queen on e2. Connecting the rooks. I agree. It makes sense. I'm sorry you really didn't get to play this game. It's still super early in the game. You know, there's not... I mean, you haven't played the middle game yet. You're just finishing the opening, basically, on this move with queen e2. And, yeah, we still don't get to see what the fight will be like. So, sorry about that. Okay, so here we are, small beak. Thinking again. Queen e3 looks logical. It's not the only option. You can also play e5 or d5. Violent moves. Nice thing for white is this rook's a little bit weird now, right? Like, you go queen e3, maybe rook here, and how does black follow from what they have? Probably internet issues, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, not an intentional BM, I guess, yeah. Good to point that out, Foos, thank you. This knight could be amazing on f4. Black could consider like e5, knight e6 as well here. Could you go bishop c6 and just sack the knight on e4? Maybe not quite. Okay, something like this would be thematic. I just played this move, right? And then you just do this. That's what was like missing from what I'm up to. The point is takes. Okay, white could not take, but if they don't take, you know. In theory, they're supposed to be able to take. But here's the point. Boom. Right? The dark squares. Yeah, before we have to worry about rook a3, and Stamen, you're right, we have to keep our eye on rook a3. But before we have to worry about rook a3, white's got to deal with queen takes bishop check, right? So rook f2, and I go d5. So now against rook a3, I've already got it covered. Queen h2. So trying to checkmate on c7, right? I suppose I gotta do this, right? Gotta do what I gotta do. Back to the tactics trainer. I mean, be aware, FXL, that your blunder might also have to do with something with your thought process versus just basic tactics, right? Like, if the blunder is a pattern that you know, then doing a bunch of tactics trainers may not solve the issue. It might have something to do with your thought process, and I would think about what was going on in the position when you made the blunder. Like, how much time did you have? How much time did you use on the move? Were you thinking aggressively, defensively, all that kind of stuff? Figure out if there's something in the thought process that led to the blunder. What do you think, Foos? It still feels awkward for white, right? That this move is coming. Black also has the h3 square right now for the knight or the bishop. So it looks pretty hard for white to defend these squares. White's really discombobulated. Discoordinated. Let's see what's happening in the game. e5 was the move. So that's a move looking at the h3 square and the f4 square, right? For the knight or bishop on h3 and then maybe knight f4. But I really think the centralization of the queen is a big deal, folks. I think it's a big deal. d5, queen h2, e5, bishop d1, awkward. Okay, it could be stamina too, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's good to know what our things are, FXL, right? Because people often try to fix the wrong thing. Like, you might already do a bunch of tactics, and then you go do more tactics, when what you really needed to do was, swim half an hour a day or whatever, and build up some of your stamina or something like that, like it could be something totally different. Smallbeak is doing a good job of putting a lot of time and thought and effort into it. Do folks see how this approach from black is seemingly harder for white to deal with than blitzing some moves and hoping white runs out of time? Do folks kind of see that in Smallbeak's approach? That this is putting a lot of pressure? to always spend some time and look ahead and find some ideas. Yeah, Foos, you're thinking about bishop d1 in this line, right? d5, queen h2, e5, bishop d1. So Foos is thinking that if I go bishop c5, the queen's covering the checkmate here, and the rook can move now, right? Without hanging queen g1 or the bishop. Now, first of all, the rook can't go here because of this square. So the rook could go to c2 or f1, unless I'm miscalculating and this move is good somehow, but it seems unlikely. King looks pretty dead as just a mate in 2, I think. So let's go back with the assumption that the rook's got to move. If it goes to c2, black could take on f3 with the knight. Looks good. Take on e4 with the pawn. Actually, if the rook goes here, that leaves open maybe this threat and keeps f3 defended. So that's going to be the most critical move. But there's bishop h3, right? And that just ends all discussion. So I think bishop c5 still wins in 1 or 2 moves here, Foos. f3, e5, rook f2 played. Okay, so that's getting out of the way of bishop h3. But it's really seemingly allowing knight h3, right? Threatening queen takes f2 check. And getting the knight in range of f4. So, yeah. I mean, it makes sense, and I don't think that white had anything especially better. I didn't see any great move for white. My suspicion would be, however, that knight h3 is killer here. Killer. If you move the rook, then knight f4 wins the bishop for free, right? So knight h3, you can't move the rook. So what, you play queen h4 or queen takes h3 or something, you know? Small beak, how is your beak? Oh, there's also the move bishop h3 here, by the way, folks. I was just so immediately drawn to knight h3. But if you look at bishop h3, you see the king needs to defend the rook. If the king goes here, then black can take on f3. If the king goes here, then black can take on e4. So the move bishop h3 is also a knockout right here. Yeah, that makes sense, Foos. If we suspect white's dying, we still try and look for moves. They may not look sound, but we're trying to make the win for black as hard to find as possible, basically, if we're playing a position like this as white, right? So, yeah. So we have to look at all those options. Cartier says check first, think later, which would be bishop h3 instead of knight h3. But small beak chooses knight h3. And as far as I can tell, queen h4 is the candidate move now. And I don't know if black's going to take on f2 then, or just put the knight on f4 and keep playing. Bishop h3 looked easier to win than this, actually, to me. But it's just a matter of what you see. They're probably both winning, and I just didn't see the best sequence after knight h3. Maybe a little bit later I will see it. Change my mind. If black takes on f2, black is up 2 pawns in the ending with white's rook on a2. So I guess that should be winning enough. I guess I don't need to see a 10-move combination for black with knight h3, queen h4. I guess sometimes simple is good enough. After queen h4, you could just take, and then, I don't know, maybe play f5, improving these bishops. And still, if the rook comes out, you take b2, and you're up 2 pawns. Wow, you played 2 classical games in one day, Boondock. That's impressive on its own. And then you won them, too, as a bonus. Knight h3. White hasn't moved yet. Doesn't seem to be anything to do. Yeah. I have real trouble just finding simple solutions like trading. That's what I'll say. I thought of queen h4, f5, Cartier. But then queen h3 because the bishop is blocked by the f pawn. I don't know. Did you have something here that I didn't see? No. Aching just like me. Yeah. So that was me, Cartier. I played this. I saw this. I was like, oh, I could take back some material, but I want to kill them. I looked at this, and then I said, ugh, knight h3 is not that easy to win with. Maybe I should play bishop h3. But that's the piece that's like missing from my game, right? Is like, well, what if you just did the simplest thing possible, right? Queen f2, knight f2, king f2. Black's up 2 pawns, right? 2 full pawns for nothing. White's bishop is bad. Black's got the bishop pair. The rook on a2 is bad. I mean, what do we need exactly to win a game, right? Of course, I could win this position with 2 extra pawns. I got it. But it's still not my instinct in the middle game to look for that kind of thing as the solution, yeah? No, 3 in a day will be insane, Boondock. You should be tired. Maybe chill out for a bit. Maybe chill out for a little bit. Let's see if Smallbeak has what I lack. The ability to just take a simple solution and be happy. It's fun watching chess, huh? You guys realize we're going to be watching the World Championships in 10 days? Coming up. Well, I mean, lately Cartier, he's training in private, so hard to know. I think the last that he played was the Olympiad in September, which looked pretty bad. I mean, of course, you know, you can only hope he's doing better at all times, but hasn't shown anything good. Hasn't shown any signs that he's feeling good. I don't know, Cartier. I mean, I could make a couple guesses, but they'd be like outright guesses, you know? One option is that the stress of the World Championship overwhelmed him. Another option is, you know, he just played a little bit badly at one event and got depressed about it, which made him continue to play badly. That's something that happened to me at one point. Was, you know, a single bad tournament ballooned into like 5 years of bad tournaments because I felt bad about it and didn't fix it. Yeah, FXL, we're doing a championship preview in the next week. We've already done a 4-part series on ranking all the World Championship matches that have ever been played before, which is kind of like, I don't know, a little bit of sort of like a hype piece for the World Championships. I mean, it's just it's a nice historical survey period, but, you know, inspired by the World Championship. And a friend of mine who was writing articles on that topic. Kostya and I do not have another team match. No, that was sort of a one and done for us. It was a knockout tournament. We lost the first round, and that was it. What I need is a tournament to prepare for. Okay, we're still here on Queen H4, small beak thinking for several minutes. I mean, I'm excited to some extent for the match, even though I don't have high hopes for some aspects of it. But I'm such a huge fan of Gukesh, you know, I'm just really hoping that he plays great. I would sort of hope that Ding plays great too. But I would be less confident in that. Look at that, small beak. Has got that something that Cartier and I are lacking. The willingness to just play the right solution. The simple solution. Do the things you gotta do. Then play the position you've got. I don't know if F5 is the only good move here. It's just the move that came to my mind. Potentially you could trade on B5, go opposite colored bishops. I don't love that, but it makes space for your king. With 2 pawns plus the better rook, you know, there's going to be more than one solution. Cool. Cool. I mean, we have that sense that we're enjoying them, which gives us this idea that other people might enjoy them too. So anyway, those are going to come out, you know, basically 3 days apart for 10 days, and then the preview of the actual match will come out also before the match, right? Yeah, you can go h5, just asking white what they plan to do about the passed h-pawn for sure. I just feel like these 3 pieces are all kind of badly placed at the moment, so I want to do something about it. I could improve the bishop with one of these moves and put my king on d7 to protect the d-pawn. That would be like simple and pleasing, I think. Right? That's a good second or third option for black other than f5, and bishop takes b5. h5 is probably fine too. But it's going to encourage white to do something like here, here, here. And then if white's rook starts to get control of this area and you haven't fixed any of your bishops, it might make the game a little competitive, right? So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good example of why I might want to play f5 before h5. Like, I want these pieces to sort of be in the game. With f5, you'll see that by comparison, if white goes for activating the rook, we can go takes, takes, takes. And now you can't go after the h-pawn because there's this move. So now you're playing something like rook g1, stopping bishop g4. Black could play h5 now, right? Because you're not even going for the pawn, and black's going for bishop g4 and this here, and could start pushing it. But you have to deal with check here and here. you'd have to really give me a strong reason to allow that kind of counterplay. So I think after rook g1, what I would do would be bishop here, poking the pawn, but basically just giving my king a better square. And you have to stop bishop takes c4 because of this, so white plays a move like king f3 or something, and then for black I can go h5. Now that pawn is much more of a threat. Bishop g4 is an issue. Rook g8, I just play king d7, everything's nice and defending each other. Everybody's tucked in happy in their beds, right? So I like this. Let's see what black did. f5, yes! Good job, small beak. And we got very quickly the trade coming out from where is the bread, so I assume bishop takes f5 is good. When I played f5, I assumed I could recapture. You mean for white boondock striker, could white maybe just bring this king around to bother black here? I suppose so, especially if black's doing nothing, right? But look, with f5, we're bringing our bishop here. So that won't even be possible. You know, a move like bishop g5 at some point to cut off some of these squares could also help coordinate with the rook, trying to find space. So if black plays to improve these bishops, that's going to be the best preparation and counter for anything where white's trying to trap our rook or bishop d1 or anything. Bishop f5 played. Seems to be the updated position. Bishop d1, going after that rook. So now that rook has to go to d3 or b4. Or black can throw in the move bishop h4 check. But then, you know, you play your in-between move, check the king moves, you move your rook, and then knight d6. So you kind of walked yourself in. You've self-double attacked with this check, right? Because then when the king moves, this is threatened and this is threatened. And you've really generated that for white. So, all that said, bishop d1, black's thinking, I would think you want to just immediately improve that rook. And, yeah, maybe rook d3 is a fine square, actually. Rook d3. You hit this and you hit this. And white can't let your rook into either d2 or taking the piece. So we're expecting something like this. And then I come here. My rook's defending knight d6. And now my pieces are working together. Yeah. Welcome to the dojo, Arthas. We're watching Where's the Bread versus Smallbeak. Fantastic dojo versus dojo matchup here. Bishop d1's been played. Black's got time. He's been using it in a reasonable way throughout. Thinking after bishop d1, basically two directions to really go. If white's idea was to march the king over, then better not to play ef5. But I mean, the reason for ef5 from white might have been that they didn't want the rook having this whole open third rank. They don't want the rook to get free air. They're trying to keep the rook kind of stuck and awkward, right? Now the rook can go anywhere, including here, winning on the spot. And if you don't trap the rook, marching the king over to the queen side is not that good against like an h5, h4 kind of plan either, right? All right, here we are. Bishop d1 is the live position. Black's thinking. Rook d3 and rook b4. Against rook b4, would white have b3 and you're really bottled up forever? Almost. You could sack a pawn with d5 to get out. And you'd probably still be winning, but, you know, not exactly what you want. I think I kind of stand by rook d3. But as black here, I would also be careful because there's not a huge margin for error here. We have to be pretty careful where we go. There's not a lot of squares available to this rook. Rook e3, knight c3 holds, though still down 2 pawns because bishop g4, like king f2. Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. Rook e3, knight c3, and against bishop g4, you have king here. And there's no knockout. Or maybe I've knocked myself out. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. The game would go on. I guess another option for white was just knight c3, right? Locking the rook out of all this area of the board, condemning it to this weird area, and white has knight d5 if you put the rook on the wrong square, right? If you go here too soon. Knight c3, probably another major candidate to keep the game more difficult for black. That's all you're doing as white, is just trying to make it as difficult as possible for black. Rook d3, good choice. King e2, bishop g5. Oh, Schmalbeek's having a good day. It's gonna have to be b3 now to stop rook d2. But the rook always has rook e3, so there's no like bishop c2 coming. Now the knight can't go to c3 because that's covered. So black's in super good position here. They could start throwing the h pawn or overprotect the d6 pawn first, which is what I would do. That way my rook doesn't have that responsibility. It's a big responsibility also because it's the bishop on f5 hanging. So, you know, we can't go fishing with rook e3 and e4 properly, I think, as long as knight d6 is hanging over us. I would play here. And white can't do much, which is another reason to play like clean improving moves. Like, they can't do this. You know, they can't play a king move that hangs the bishop. They can't move the bishop anywhere. The rook can't come here because of this. They just can't do much. So, yeah. So I just go king d7. I'd feel good. We got to move. It's king d7. Beak. Pecking away. Pecking away. There's the beauty of a classical game, you know, it goes on for a while. Intense stuff happens, and then you still have to play the end game, right? We had that rook g3 check sack, or, you know, complicated, fancy rook pseudo sack. I mean, you got about enough material for it. Then we had like a complicated phase for a few moves after that. Then we transpose into the end game, and we actually get a full end game too. That's what I really love with classical games, is when you get every phase of the game in there. I feel like if white is really stuck and can't find anything to do, the easiest plan to break the resistance is going to be h5, h4, h3. Now that the king is here. King here, knight c7, knight d5 doesn't really help black. So this is like about as good as it gets, and then you just push the pawn. White's played rook b2, which to me looks like a move that doesn't really do anything. So my first thought is that my eye is on h5 for black. Let's refill the water. Remembered I should have something else good here. I'm going to try this one I haven't really had before. Didn't have much of a dinner today after my my swim, so feeling really weak. Okay, Foos has looked more at that knight c3 move, and it does put up resistance. Yeah. And Stamen doesn't see a way to stop the h-pawn. This bar supposedly has just 3 real ingredients. Hopefully it doesn't have any non-real ingredients. Dates, pecans, almonds. Or pecans. Sounds good. Yeah. Pretty good. That's really simple. So what'll it be? Small beak. Beautiful game. Precarious rook. I guess the game would have been even more intense if we got that knight c3 move from white. Right here after f5. You know, maybe this knight c3 move. And this rook's actually off on a weird, weird area. I'm ravenous anytime I swim, even if it's short, I guess. Well, I mean, ravenous is maybe strong, but I'm hungry. I'm noticeably hungry. And I frequently forget to eat if I don't exercise, but anytime I swim afterwards, it's just like, oh man. Thinking about being hungry all the time. H5. Murderous. What does white come up with? B4. Yeah, trying to do something. As black, you could take it or leave it, as they say. You can just ignore it, or you could grab it. Why not? Yeah, these events are very fun, FXL. People really do play great games. And also blunderous games. You know, we get some of both. We get everything. Bishop c1 is pretty strong too, by the way. A little bit of a random move, but the rook's defending this pawn, right? And bishop c1 going after the defender. It's fairly killing here. That's the move of somebody who's like being very careful, looking at everything, trying to take away every option for the opponent. Well, let's check that thought, Foos. H4 takes, for argument's sake, right? Check. Takes. King here. H3. Can anyone stop the pawn? King E1, H2. King F2, H1. F4. Maybe E4. Not bishop e4 because of check. E4. Knight d4 here. Yeah, I think so, Foos. Now that said, after rook d2, check, rook d2, bishop d2, white could not take this piece, and the pawn won't queen yet, right? So they could do something like king here, and then you recapture this. You keep the 2 extra pawns, and you got a rook trade for free, and you keep going with, you know, a winning position. So certainly possible. Did small b do something? Traded. Okay. Let me show folks real quick the point of my bishop c1 move, because this is like a pretty simple, just kill any hope kind of move. You attack the rook that's defending the pawn. The rook doesn't have a lot of squares to go to, right? The key thing is to see the bishop kind of looking at b1 and c2. So against rook c2, you go check and you take it, right? And same thing against rook b1. You go check and you take it. So bishop c1, the rook can go to a2 or b3, right? If it goes to b3, we get a rook trade. And, you know, maybe h4 is even better, but we get a rook trade and then take this pawn. So that's the third pawn. Notice the knight is now surrounded, like it actually can't get back. And we just traded rooks and took a third pawn. That's the kind of stuff that just, if you're paying attention and you find this, that's where your opponents resign, you know? It just kills any hope. There's nothing to do. And if instead white doesn't give you the rook trade and goes here, you take the pawn just the same. And what you might notice now is that black controls b3, b2, and b1. So actually they've already got the red carpet laid out. Meaning, again, it's just over. So I'm sure there's like 6 ways to skin the cat here. But to me, this move, bishop c1, is the kind of move that ends all resistance. I find that move, if I'm playing, you know, against another IM or GM or somebody good, I find that move, they're going to stop wriggling. You know, that'll be the end. Check. King goes to e1. Got to keep an eye on the bishop. I don't know that this does much, but perhaps this is going to keep coming now. Now the knight can move to c3. But nothing's going to stop that pawn in time. I didn't get to the gym much this week because we recorded a podcast every single day. And they were like 2-hour podcasts, and we were doing research to prepare for the podcasts. Basically spent the whole week just doing the podcast. Plus, you know, 1 million hours of watching my kids, as always. Notice small beak. Not a ton of time left. Starting to get down to the last, you know, 2 or 3 thinks you're going to have this game. Then you're going to be playing blitz yourself. Working on probably one of the best games they've ever played. We'll see if they can bring it home. AB4 rook d2, by the way, was slightly shaky. Like, this was far from black's best option here, I think. Compared to pushing the pawn or bishop c1ing. Yeah. H4 and bishop c1 would have been the kind of clinical moves. Now it's getting a little tight for small beak on time. Howdy, simple guy. How you doing? Feeling at peace today? Rook a2, interesting move. It's threatening bishop here, attacking the rook. Also, by that same token, cutting off knight c3 because of bishop d2. And there's ideas of like starting some kind of attack against white's king with the bishops. And normally it's simpler to queen a pawn, but if you can calculate something spiffy, then you can go for this. f4. All right, I take, I guess. I mean, bishop h4 looks playable too. Yeah, just takes it. I like that Smallbeak didn't overthink that one. You could spend 4 minutes out of your 12 minutes looking for a win here with a lot of checks. You know, like this. Or like this. You can calculate this. This. Spend some time on it. If you don't find a knockout, then you're really low on time. You know, so just take it. Why not? You've got enough to win everything. You've still got this idea. You've still got this idea. Rook b3, covering some of these checks. So bishop g4 is sort of like a technical move, trying to trade. Rook a1 could be a move. And of course, there's always, you know, queening this pawn. You've got control of h3 and h2. They don't have their eye on h4 at the moment, so let's go. What do I suggest if a 3-year-old kid is better than you? Isn't it too demotivating? I mean, have you played Anish and lost to Anish? Personally, I play chess, you know, if it's fun for me and I've got interesting things to think about, not based on whether or not other people are better or worse than me. Looks like we're about to get a trade here. Either that or rook c or rook a1. But I think black's taking the trade here on c3. I mean, there's also bishop d3, which is plenty good. But not a lot of time, so I'd be inclined to do easy things. I think bishop c3, rook c3, rook a1 wins the bishop on d1. So that's my first thought of what I'd do. There's that trade. There's probably also nothing wrong with h3, h2 here, but rook a1 will really end it all. That's pretty good. Pecan pie, Larabar. I rate it good. 3 extra pawns at this point. So there's many ways. Okay, and I think Smallbeak doesn't look at rook a1. Probably was just looking at h3 basically that whole time. Bishop f3. Yeah. So Where's the Bread knew this would win the bishop, so gets it out of the way immediately and trying to deal with this pawn, perhaps queening. Now, the move e4 looks killer. That bishop doesn't really have anywhere to go after e4. And if bishop takes b7 bothers you, it's the kind of thing that would cause you to notice e4. Rook a4 is also good enough, but not really my style here. Boom! e4. Put him out of his misery. The bishops just run out of places to go. It's weird to put all your pawns on light squares with the light squared bishop, but it's just happening to kill this guy here. He's got nowhere to go. In the corner, he'd be lost. Where's the Bread takes on e4 quickly. Takes. Is he going to take on h3? And hope that black doesn't play bishop g2. Probably. Might as well try. If you let the pawn go to h1, you're definitely lost. But Smallbeak saw it coming, and that is going to close out a fantastic win for Smallbeak. What a game. What a game the Beak has played today. That was epic. Epic. Great stuff. Great stuff. Super high quality game for a 1700-ish level. Excellent stuff. Hats off to the contestants. Let's make tomorrow morning's tournaments. While we just hang out for a little bit longer here. Saturday, Rapid, go 1700 plus. Be rated. Duration 3 hours. Time control 15.5. Start on the 16th at 9:30 a.m. is our normal time. Create it. Let's grab the link. Okay, close that. Make a new tournament. We're going to make 3 of them for tomorrow. Saturday Rapid, 12 to 1700. 15.5, 3 hours. Start tomorrow. 9:32. Copy that. And make the last one. Saturday Rapid under 1200. Copy that. Okay. Now, let's go to the Chess Dojo Club. 1600 plus games. looks like there is a game here for Darmuse. Oh no, it's not a classical game. We'll close that. Sorry. Chess Club, under 1600. See if there's any games going on right now. Looks like no. Okay. Well, that is fine by me. Let's update the links for tomorrow. All right, and there we've got all the tournaments set for tomorrow. Exclam play. That's gonna show them. Whoops, I see one little error in that. So let's fix that last one, 1700 plus. Okay, and we're good for tomorrow. And we had a good day today. So from one good day to the next, I wish you all the best. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for everybody who played today and gave us a fun show. And yeah, see you around.